I'm James. I'm 29, a mechanical engineer, and, for better or worse, the reliable one in my family. You know, the guy who always picks up the phone, pays the bill when it's awkward, and keeps his cool when everyone else loses theirs. The one who stays quiet when people cross a line because it's not worth the fight. That guy. I never thought that being the responsible one would mean getting iced out of my own sister's wedding, the one I paid for. This all started about a year ago when my younger sister, Tiffany, got engaged to this guy named Brandon. I didn't know him well, but what I did know didn't impress me. He was flashy, loud, and had that "I'm better than everyone here" aura. The kind of guy who shows up to a family dinner in designer shades and won't take them off even indoors. Still, I figured, if she was happy, that's what mattered. Tiffany's always had a flair for the dramatic, so I chalked it up to her usual taste in characters. Now, our family isn't wealthy by any means. We're solidly middle class, and our parents are retired with just enough to live comfortably. I've done well for myself, mostly because I live modestly, save aggressively, and have been working since I was 17. I don't post vacations or fancy cars online, so most people, including my family, don't really grasp how much I've socked away over the years. But I've always helped where I can. Covered my mom's dental surgery, paid my dad's car repairs, bought groceries when times got tight. So when Tiffany started planning her wedding, it didn't take long before the whispers began. She wanted an elegant vineyard ceremony with a full string quartet, custom flower arrangements, and, get this, doves. Actual white doves. She toured venues with price tags that made my jaw drop. The kind of places where the deposit alone was more than my car. I remember the first time she called me about it. I was making dinner when my phone buzzed. She skipped pleasantries. "James, you know how you're always saying you want to help the family? Well, this is kind of huge." She launched into her grand vision, like she was pitching a business proposal. I listened, waiting for the ask, because there's always an ask. Sure enough, she finished with, "The venue's asking for a $14,000 deposit to lock in the date. I know it's a lot, but you've always been the one we count on." I didn't say yes right away. I asked her if she was sure this was the wedding she wanted. She brushed it off like I was missing the point. "Come on, James. This is my one special day. You only get married once. Unless you're like Aunt Carol," she added with a giggle. I said I'd think about it. And for a few days, I really did. But then Mom called. Then Dad. Both gently nudging. "It's Tiffany's big day. She'll only do this once. She really wants this venue." Eventually, I caved. I told myself it was a gift, not a loan. That it would bring the family joy. That I wouldn't hold it over her. That was mistake number one. The weeks rolled by. Tiffany sent me updates about vendors and tastings and dress fittings. But it was always through group texts or casual mentions in conversations I was barely included in. Still, I assumed I was invited. Why wouldn't I be? I was footing the bill. I found out I wasn't invited 2 months before the wedding. It was a random Sunday morning. I was scrolling social media, sipping coffee, when I saw a post from one of Tiffany's bridesmaids, some boomerang clip of them trying on dresses. In the background, a seating chart was taped to the wall. Curious, I zoomed in. Row after row of names. No James. No table that sounded like it could be mine. No +1. I thought maybe I'd been missed. Maybe it was an old draft. So I texted Tiffany. "Hey, just saw that seating chart on Jen's story. Was that final? Didn't see my name. Probably a mistake, lol." No reply that day. The next morning, she sent back a single line. "We decided to keep it small and intimate. No hard feelings." No hard feelings? I was stunned. I called her, thinking there had to be more to it. She answered with a sugar-sweet tone, like nothing was wrong. "James, what's up? What's up? I'm just wondering why I'm not invited to the wedding I'm paying for." There was a pause, and then a sigh like I was being difficult. "Look, it's not personal. Brandon and I had to make some tough choices, and we didn't think your energy really matched the vibe we're going for. Plus, you're not super close with our friends." My energy? I felt heat rise in my face. "Tiff, I gave you $14,000 for this. You're saying I don't deserve a seat." She was silent for a second, then said something I'll never forget. "You offered. That money was a gift. I didn't owe you anything. And no offense, but I don't think you'd even enjoy it. You're not exactly the champagne brunch type." Her voice was calm, dismissive, like I was being childish for even asking. I hung up. I couldn't even find words. I told my parents. They were sympathetic, but vague. "Well, it is her wedding. Maybe she just wants to keep things drama-free. Maybe don't stir the pot. I stared at them. Stir the pot? I was the one who made the wedding happen. Without me, there'd be no doves, no quartet, no vineyard, just a courthouse and a justice of the peace. And somehow I was the outsider? Over the next few weeks, the tension simmered. I didn't go to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't asked to help with setup. I got updates secondhand, usually through social media or offhand comments from relatives. And then came the cocky grin. 1 week before the wedding, I bumped into Tiffany at Mom's house. She was in full bride mode, tanned, toned, and glowing with that insufferable superiority people get when they think they've won. She spotted me and raised an eyebrow. "Hey, James," she said, voice all silk and smugness. "No hard feelings, right? I mean, it's not like you'd even want to be there. You're kind of low-key. This wedding is going to be, like, next-level fun." She smiled wide. Too wide. Then she added, "But hey, thanks for everything. Really, you made this dream possible." She gave a little finger wave and walked off, hips swaying like she was on a runway. That was the moment. The moment something inside me shifted. Not out of rage, but clarity. I'd been used. Gaslit. Dismissed like some boring footnote in her glamorous story. And suddenly, I didn't feel like staying quiet anymore. I'll spare you the legalese, but let's just say I started reading over the contract I'd signed for the venue. Turns out, the deposit wasn't non-refundable if the person who paid for the event submitted a cancellation request under certain conditions. I had kept my name on everything, because of course I did. They never even thought to ask for ownership transfer. Brandon probably thought details were beneath him. There were loopholes, big ones that, if pulled just right, might cause a cascade of inconvenience. But I didn't act right away. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I waited. Patiently. Quietly. I watched their Instagram countdowns. I watched the final dress-fitting selfies. The TikToks about hand-calligraphed menus and imported champagne. I waited until the very last minute. And just when they thought everything was set in stone, just when the band was booked, the caterer confirmed, the floral arch ordered from Italy, that's when things started unraveling. I'll never forget the look on the venue manager's face when I showed up 3 days before the wedding, folder in hand, documents ready, cool as ice. Her name was Valerie. We'd met once during a tasting months back, but I doubted she remembered me. I sat across from her in the mahogany-lined office, a framed photo of the vineyard stretching behind her, and slid the contract across the desk. "I'd like to initiate a cancellation," I said. She blinked. "Pardon, this," I pointed, "is the event scheduled for this Saturday. I paid the deposit. My name is the primary on the account. And per Clause 7B, I'm requesting to cancel due to breach of agreement, specifically, the misuse of funds for an event I am no longer participating in and which I never approved the guest list for." Valerie adjusted her glasses. "Sir, this is extremely short notice." "I understand," I said, handing her my ID and a notarized letter. "But the clause allows cancellation up to 48 hours prior, assuming the primary client withdraws. And I am. Effective immediately." She read the letter twice. "You realize this will forfeit the event entirely?" I nodded. "You realize there will be no refund?" I smiled slowly. "I'm not asking for one." She hesitated. "We will have to notify all vendors. Staff. The catering." "I understand," I repeated, calm as a monk. Valerie leaned back, clearly trying to gauge if this was some petty family squabble or a legitimate legal move. But the paperwork was flawless. I'd double-checked it with a lawyer friend of mine before I came. Everything was airtight. Still, she made one final attempt. "May I ask what prompted this?" I looked her dead in the eye. "They told me I didn't deserve a seat." Valerie's mouth opened slightly, then closed. She nodded once. "Understood." The cancellation was processed. Now, I knew they wouldn't hear about it right away. That was the cruel genius of it all. Because this place? They didn't email you a cancellation notice. They mailed it, physically, to the primary client's address. Mine. Which meant Tiffany and Brandon wouldn't find out until the day of. Or rather, until they showed up and saw the iron gates locked. 3 days passed. I kept my phone off the entire weekend. Radio silence. I stayed with a buddy across town, played video games, ate pizza, and tried not to think about the storm I'd just set into motion. But by Monday morning, my voicemail was nuclear. 27 missed calls. 10 voicemails. A string of furious texts from relatives, some with caps lock rants, others with stunned confusion. But the one that hit different came from my cousin Mel. She sent me a single photo. It showed Tiffany standing outside the vineyard gates in her $5,000 gown, makeup perfect, hair curled into some fairy tale updo, and a look of complete horror on her face. Her mouth open mid-scream. Behind her, a crowd of guests, some in tuxedos, some holding gifts, just standing there in disbelief. There were no white doves, no music, no champagne, just a locked gate. A closed for private maintenance sign hanging from it like a slap to the face. And Brandon? He wasn't in the picture. But later, I'd hear what happened from my uncle, who'd gone to the wedding with his wife. Apparently, Brandon tried scaling the gate to demand answers from the property manager who had shown up to inform them the event had been canceled. The guy literally yelled, "Do you know who I am?" and threatened to sue everyone in a 10-mile radius. It didn't work. The vendors didn't show. The caterer had already redirected supplies elsewhere. The string quartet? Gone. The florist? Canceled. The entire thing crumbled like a cheap centerpiece. And Tiffany, she had a full-on breakdown. Started screaming at our parents. At the sky. At Brandon. Then at random guests who asked if they could still go to the after-party. At some point, she even screamed my name loud enough that a nearby vineyard worker told her to keep it down or leave the property entirely. She eventually did. But not before smashing a centerpiece that had been delivered early and yelling, "I'll kill him. I'll kill him for this." You know, classy bride stuff. I didn't respond to any calls for a full week. I needed space. But eventually, I sat down and listened to the voicemails. My mom's was heartbreaking. "James, please call me. I don't understand what's happening." Tiffany said the venue was shut down. Was this some kind of mistake? My dad's was quieter. "Just, you didn't have to go that far, son." But the real prize? Tiffany's voice message. Left at 3:47 a.m. "How could you do this to me? I swear I will never forgive you. You ruined my life. Do you think this makes you a hero or something? I hope you're proud of yourself, you selfish freak. Stay out of my life forever. No thank you for the money." No acknowledgement of what she did. Just pure rage. But what shocked me most wasn't the fury. It was the next message, left just 12 hours later. "James, it's Tiffany. I don't know what happened to you. You used to be so kind. So reliable. I know things got messy, but I was under a lot of stress. I'm sure we can talk this out. I want to move forward. As a family, please call me back." That, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. There was never going to be an apology, just manipulation, an attempt to pivot the narrative, make me the villain, rewrite history. So I didn't call back. But then something happened that I didn't expect. Something that cracked the tension wide open. Because someone else, someone very unexpected, decided they'd had enough of Tiffany's drama too. And they went public. And that's where things really started to spiral. It was Aunt Rebecca, of all people. Now, to give you some context, Aunt Rebecca is my mom's older sister. She's always been the family's unofficial historian/peacemaker/firecracker. She's also brutally honest, has zero tolerance for nonsense, and once kicked her ex-husband out of a family reunion for being as useful as a soggy tissue. So when she speaks, people listen. A week after the wedding that wasn't, Rebecca posted a Facebook status that made every group chat in our extended family explode. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't vague. It read, "When you take your brother's money and kick him out of your wedding like he's a nobody, don't act surprised when karma shows up in heels and locks the gates. Maybe next time, appreciate the people who actually love you." And she tagged Tiffany by name. That post got 143 comments in 2 hours, most of them from relatives. Some defending Tiffany, others demanding to know what happened, and quite a few dropping popcorn emojis or saying things like, "Phew, I was wondering who'd say it first." Tiffany replied, "Of course." And in true Tiffany fashion, she did it with just enough self-pity and spin to make it sound like she was the victim. I don't know why people are attacking me over a misunderstanding. I had a vision for my day and didn't want drama. That doesn't mean I don't love my brother. This is really hurtful. Misunderstanding. She called it a misunderstanding. And the thing is, that might have worked if Rebecca didn't come back swinging 10 minutes later with screenshots. That's right. Somehow, Aunt Rebecca had receipts. Apparently, Tiffany had texted her a week before the wedding bragging about not inviting James because he's boring and doesn't vibe with Brandon's crowd. She even joked, "He's like an awkward wallflower at a rave." Let him stay home and read his books. Rebecca posted that exact line. Captioned it, "This is what you call a misunderstanding." Boom. Silence. Dead silence for 2 whole hours. Then Tiffany deleted her original comment. But it was too late. The thread had legs now. My cousin Aaliyah, who used to be close with Tiffany, commented, "Girl, you seriously didn't invite your brother after he paid? Who raised you?" Others chimed in. Some tried to steer things toward peace. One uncle said, "We need to resolve this privately," but got roasted for it. Even my mom commented, just once, and all she said was, "This breaks my heart." The whole family was watching now. Divided. Confused. And Tiffany? She spiraled. Her next post was a thinly veiled rant about people who act generous but hold things over your head like a weapon, followed by a tearful Instagram story that looked like she'd been crying for hours, captioned, "I just wanted one day for me." Is that so wrong? It was drama. Pure, theatrical drama. And I stayed silent. Because I didn't need to say anything. The truth was already echoing louder than I ever could. But here's the kicker. Remember how I said I kept the venue in my name? Well, I had one more surprise up my sleeve. Because after the cancellation, the vineyard still owed me something. A credit. The event was technically non-refundable, but since I hadn't used any catering or services and had canceled just inside the allowable window, the venue manager offered me a partial event credit, worth around $8,000. You can use it any time in the next year, Valerie had told me. For a private party, a retirement event, a small wedding, whatever you'd like. Just give us 2 weeks' notice. I hadn't planned to use it. But now? Oh, I had an idea. Something poetic. Something public. Because while Tiffany was licking her wounds and trying to regain control of the family narrative, I decided to host a little event of my own. A quiet celebration. Of real family. The kind that shows up for you. Not because they expect something, but because they care. I sent out a few invitations, paper ones, no social media. No fanfare. Just a classy little note that read, "You're cordially invited to an evening of gratitude and laughter under the stars." No drama. No doves. Just the people who matter. I kept the guest list tight, 30 people. Mostly cousins, my best friend Josh, Aunt Rebecca, and a few relatives who had stood by me through it all. The night of the event, the vineyard looked magical. Candles flickering in glass lanterns. A live acoustic trio playing soft jazz. A simple buffet of great food. Bottled wine with custom labels that read, "Family is earned, not assigned." People laughed. They shared stories. Rebecca toasted me, saying, "To James," the quiet one who finally spoke louder than all the noise. We clinked glasses, and that's when I saw the headlights. A car pulling into the far end of the gravel lot. I squinted. My stomach dropped. It was her, Tiffany, wearing a hoodie and messy bun, not her usual curated look. Brandon wasn't with her. She looked tired, pale, like someone who hadn't slept in a few days. She stepped out of the car and stood there, watching, waiting. Nobody said a word. Everyone just sort of froze, wine halfway to their lips. I felt a dozen eyes turn to me. And in that moment, standing in the vineyard I'd paid for, surrounded by people who loved me, I had a choice. I could walk to her. I could let her back in. Or I could do nothing. Let the silence speak. Let the locked gate she left me behind become hers. But I didn't move. And neither did she. She stood there for a full minute, then slowly turned back to her car and drove away. But what I didn't know was that she'd left something behind. Something unexpected. And when I found it, tucked under a chair near the vineyard gate an hour later, everything changed. It was a plain white envelope. No name on it. No glitter, no stickers, no monogrammed return address like Tiffany usually insisted on with her stationery. Just a single, unsealed flap tucked beneath the cushion of one of the chairs near the gate. Someone, probably her, had slid it under there during that short minute she stood staring at us. I picked it up as people were starting to pack up and say their goodbyes. The music was tapering off, plates being cleared. The vibe was light, even joyful. But the envelope in my hand weighed more than it should have. Back at home, I debated tossing it. I even hovered over the trash can for a good 30 seconds. But I didn't. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Neatly penned, but not in her usual bubbly, over-the-top cursive. This was rushed. Slanted. Like her hand shook while writing. "James, if you're reading this, I guess you found it. I didn't know if I wanted you to or not. I've written and thrown away about 5 versions of this, so if it comes off messy, sorry. I messed up. I know I did. I don't expect you to forgive me, and honestly, part of me doesn't even think I deserve it. But I can't stop thinking about what happened. I've replayed it over and over, trying to justify it to myself, and I can't anymore. Brandon pushed me. I won't pretend I wasn't a part of it, because I was. I liked the idea of having a perfect wedding. He kept saying we needed to trim the guest list, and that you weren't cool enough to be part of it. He made it sound like it was about vibes, image, branding. I let myself believe that. But I knew you paid. I just didn't want to think about what that meant. I didn't want to feel like I owed you something. I wanted the wedding and the fantasy without remembering the sacrifices. That's on me. You've always been there. More than anyone. You never made me feel stupid for needing help. You just gave it. And I spat on that. I pushed you away because it was easier than facing the truth, that the dream I had was built on someone else's back. When I saw that gate locked, it wasn't just the wedding that collapsed. It was the version of myself I'd been clinging to. And when Brandon started screaming and blaming everyone else, that's when I saw who he really was. We're not together anymore. In case you were wondering. He packed up and went back to LA, said he can't be with someone who attracts chaos. Maybe he forgot he was the one who lit the match. I'm not asking you to invite me back in. I know I don't deserve that yet. But I wanted you to know. I do see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. Tiffany. I sat there for a long time. I read it twice. 3 times. My first reaction wasn't forgiveness. It was disbelief. Because for once, Tiffany didn't sound like she was manipulating. There was no subtle guilt tripping, no passive-aggressive jabs. It wasn't a PR move. It sounded real. But after everything, I didn't know what to do with that. So I did nothing. For a while. The next few weeks were quiet. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. We hovered in that awkward purgatory where you're not sure if a relationship is dead or just sleeping. My parents tried to smooth things over. Mom texted me some of Tiffany's baby photos one day, unprompted. Dad called to tell me she's going through a lot. But I didn't engage. Not yet. I needed to sit with it. Not the drama. Not the wedding. Her. The version of her I remembered. The little sister who once cried when I got picked on at school. The one who made me paper bracelets and said I was her superhero. That version felt like a lifetime ago. Could she come back from this? Maybe. But on my terms. Then, one Saturday afternoon in early spring, I got a knock at my door. No text first. No warning. Just a knock. I opened it, and there she was. Tiffany. She looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Like someone who'd finally been deflated after floating too high for too long. She held something in her hands. A box. Not wrapped. Just a plain, worn shoebox. I'm not staying, she said quickly. Just, can I give you this? I nodded. She handed me the box, then stepped back like it might explode. Inside were all the photos I'd ever given her. Us at the zoo. Us at Dad's 50th. A crayon drawing from when she was 5 that read, "Me and Jamie forever." There was also a check. For $14,000. I sold the ring, she said, answering the question before I could ask it. Brandon didn't even try to stop me. Guess it wasn't really forever. I didn't say anything. I was still flipping through the photos. I know it doesn't fix anything, she added, voice trembling. But I needed to try. I looked up at her. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't wipe them. She just let them fall. I don't need a seat at your table, she whispered. I just wanted you to know I'd stand in the back if you ever let me in again. And then she turned and left. No hug. No scene. Just quiet. And that's when I knew she meant it. It took months, but slowly, piece by piece, we rebuilt something. Not the old sibling bond. That was gone. But something new. Something real. We met for coffee once a week. Neutral territory, no family allowed. We talked. We didn't bring up the wedding. Not at first. She got a job working with a nonprofit for community events. Said she wanted to do something where her name wasn't on the sign. I believed her. She looked lighter. Freer. Like someone unlearning all the wrong lessons. As for me, I'm still me. Still the quiet one. Still the guy who pays attention to the fine print and doesn't make scenes. But I'm not invisible anymore. Not to my family. Not to myself. Tiffany tells people that her brother taught her the meaning of consequences. I think that's her way of saying she learned. And me? I learned that sometimes the only way to make people see you is to disappear when they expect you most. Sometimes you have to lock the gate. So they learn to knock next time. And maybe, just maybe, ask permission to come in.